I want to tap to caffeine a little bit because I feel that's a very like it's the most abused thing if you look at it in modern work life, especially is that you have caffeine all night long, and then comes obviously you have energy drinks with higher caffeine levels. Um, at which level is it you're using it right, and at which level does it become your okay? You're using it as a crutch, and then obviously you're abusing it.
So I think the first thing for us to appreciate is that most caffeine is sold to us as sugar. If you look at the makeup of any high street available cup of coffee and what the typical individual is consuming through that, there is a ridiculously large amount of sugar, which is what people are becoming addicted towards, which has a separate set of health consequences to caffeine. Caffeine at the epidemiological level, i.e., across society, there is a very clear signal towards a health benefit. Between 1 to 2 cups of coffee, or not coffee, caffeine every day. That could come as tea or that could come as caffeine. I'm not going to talk about the energy drinks because that's, again,
Yeah,
laden with
that's
sugar.
also
And,
sugar. Like that's
yeah,
another level.
yeah.
Yeah.
So clearly, having some caffeine in the day, 1 to 2 cups, is advantageous at the population level, right? And we see that in all the blue zones. Each of the blue zones, people there, and blue zones for people who are listening, are areas of the world which have a highest probability of you living to be 110 and beyond. And this was a National Geographic study that was done about 15 or 20 years ago. So all of them consume caffeine. Now, the question therefore is, how does caffeine work? And based on how it works, how should we use it to our advantage beyond the health benefit? So caffeine, apart from being a sort of cardiovascular drug from the health perspective, I typically probably has a net lowering effect on blood pressure, is that caffeine is a stimulant. And it's a stimulant, therefore, that's why we feel all peppy and energized and ready to go. The problem with caffeine is that for most of us who are normal metabolizers of caffeine, and you can check whether you're a slow or a fast metabolizer by doing a simple saliva-based genetic test, it takes the average person about 6 hours to clear half of the concentration of caffeine in the bloodstream, which is what we call a half-life. So let's take the average cup of coffee, 120 milligrams of caffeine. 6 hours, so if say, let's say I have it at 10 a.m., 6 hours later, so at 4 p.m., I now have 120, half is 60. I have 60 milligrams of caffeine in my bloodstream. 6 hours after that, which now takes me at 10 p.m., I now have half of that. I have 30 milligrams of caffeine in my bloodstream, right? So it's very easy to understand then over a few days as you keep having one, especially if you're having that cup of coffee at 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., you have basically got super levels of caffeine in your bloodstream even when you're trying to go to sleep. And caffeine very clearly disturbs sleep. We know that, right? So caffeine, if you want to use it, has a very particular window of time that you should use it in. The window is not the first thing you wake up in the morning. And it's for this
I'm
reason
so
again.
happy you said that.
Yeah, and I recently wrote an article on this as well, because what happens is your body loves yin and yangs. So as we want to go to sleep, melatonin levels start to rise, typically from about sunset, 6 p.m. It reaches its highest point around 4 a.m. And that's when we are in our deepest sleep. And then it slowly starts to curtail off as we wake up. In opposition to that, cortisol levels start to rise in the early hours of the night to reach its threshold at between 8 to 9 a.m. in the morning, and then it starts to come down. Anyone who's ever had a blood cortisol test will know, every doctor across the world will tell you, you have to have it done at 8 a.m. There's no other time that you can do a blood cortisol level, because that's your highest level. Cortisol is your stress hormone. It what makes you feel alive, feel awake, get fight or flight ready. Why then, when your body is in its natural state of highest, are you trying to put another stimulant on top? The caffeine will have zero effect. Caffeine has a dependency, so we become more dependent. So the same dose, to get the same effect, you need a higher and higher dose, right? So you're not actually doing your body any net gain. The best time to have caffeine for most people, therefore, is between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. As the cortisol level naturally starts to come down and your body needs a little bit of a kick, that's when you can have the stimulus. But it's not too late in the afternoon such that it'll begin to interfere with your nighttime rituals. So that's the sweet spot. So anyone who wants to have a cup of coffee, please, between 10 a.m. and 2
Provided
p.m.
you slept well.
Provided you slept well and provided you are a normal metabolizer. If you're a slow metabolizer, then I would actually move that 2 p.m. up to 12 p.m. If you're a fast metabolizer, then you could probably get away with a cup of caffeine at about 4 p.m. or 6 p.m. and it may not affect you in the night.
You're
either.
pushing my last cup of coffee from 4 p.m. now to like 2 p.m., which is so I've actually moved from a person who would have his last cup of coffee at 6 p.m. now to about 4:30. I think the next thing I want to try is can the 3 p.m. one be my last cup of coffee?
And that's why I think, devices like this ring are really interesting because I go through, like, as we were jokingly speaking about the fact that, yes, I was slightly insane to run a full marathon 3 days after coming off steroids and antibiotics for pneumonia. In the lead up to that marathon for 3 weeks, because I was so unwell, I biohacked the crap out of my body. I was literally looking at every single thing I did from each of those 5 pillars, knowing that I really wanted to run this marathon because it meant so much to me, and optimize everything. And one of the biggest things I did was I just took caffeine out of the equation completely. I love black coffee, and I use it usually every day to my advantage. But because I needed to optimize recovery, in addition to changing my magnesium salt and really looking at all of my sleep routines, I just cut caffeine out completely. And through the data, I was able to appreciate for myself just how much faster I fell asleep. So the latency period shrunk significantly. And the period of time that I spent in deep sleep, which is where your physical body gets its most restorative capacity, expanded itself, right? So that's why I think these little tiny things can, at the right context, as you were saying, give you that little bit of insight to know, okay, this is something which is useful for me and I'm going to stick to it.
Like this clip, make sure you watch the full episode.